Welcome to the C-Suite Mentor, the place where you will learn the tools, strategies, and mindset to scale your business sustainably and build a lasting legacy. I'm your host, Theresa. As a fellow CEO, I understand what it takes to scale a business to 7 and multiple 8 figures. It's not necessarily what you might think. It requires a complete shift in how you think, strategize, and execute key actions in your business. My mission is to help CEOs step back into the driver's seat of their business by optimizing their operations, empowering their team, and staying in total alignment with their big vision. So, are you ready to exchange everything that hasn't worked for strategies that will? You're in the right place, so let's go. Welcome back to another episode of the C-Suite Mentor. I almost said locally grown. Oh my God, that was the previous name of my podcast. This is quite a day I'm having. The C-Suite Mentor podcast. I know we keep it real here on the podcast because I have had all kinds of fluky things happen. That is just how I do life, really. So
love it.
I am joined today by my friend. I actually know Natalie from high school and dance, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But welcome. This is Natalie Solomon Bramage. And thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always so excited that I get to connect, and I hope we were able to connect through this platform. I know we've been talking off and on through social media and reconnecting and LinkedIn and stuff. So I'm just really thankful and honored to be a guest on your show.
Awesome. So Natalie has quite a story. And when I bring people on the podcast, normally I talk about business strategy and vision and leadership and building the experience in your business. But when I have people on, I always like to highlight their story because first of all, I love people. I love hearing people's stories. My grandfather used to say, Theresa, you ask too many questions, because I always wanted to know about his story,
right?
And so I always like people to tell their story, and, so we can see kind of the ins and outs of what they've been through, building a business, running a business, being a leader. And I got to tell you, Natalie she is an entrepreneur. She is a leader. She is a visionary, and all of that outside. She also is a public health analyst. And has done amazing work in that area. And I am just super excited to have her tell her story. So I remember, I just have to say this.
Yes.
I think the first time that I reconnected with you, we connected on social media, but I think the first time that I reached out was I was driving to one of my clients and Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation came on.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, because I remember we were in Fran's dance class and it was during the Rhythm Nation tour. And that year that was the year that we learned the choreography to, I think it was Nasty. Janet Jackson's the song Nasty.
I don't even remember, but I just knew it was Janet Jackson because I told my parents I was going to become a Janet Jackson backup dancer. Gosh. And they were like, no, you're not. No, you're not.
I remember that. I remember you saying that. But I saw this pop up. And by the way, that choreography that she taught us, I actually, when I became a cheerleader in college, I had to come up with a dance like that. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And then I thought, I'm just going to use that. And they used it. They used it. I was like, okay, it's really not mine, but I'm going to say it.
Yes. I took a corrective license with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Creative license, rather. Sorry.
Creative license.
Yes.
But yeah, I saw Rhythm Nation came up and I was like, Natalie, I remember I was like messaging. I'm like, Natalie, look at this. Because I just remember you. And I remember, like I said, that year, I think it was like, what was it? Like 89 or 90 or I don't know. I'm dating us.
Something like that. And I went back to Allentown to see her too last year, downtown.
Oh, did you?
I did. I did. One of
Oh
my
my
girlfriends, one of my
gosh.
other friends that I was a cheerleader with in Central, bought me the ticket for my birthday, and we went to her concert. And I've pretty much been to all of her concerts throughout all the years, and
Oh my
I
gosh.
just love
Well, you were going to be a backup dancer.
exactly. Exactly. Went to college. I ended up joining a dance group. I forget what it was called, dance counselor or whatever. And I ended up doing If, her whole If album. I did the choreography for all of that for our dance troupe. I was in two different dance troupes. One that was like, of course, like technically trained, and then like our the little hip hop group that we had on campus. But yeah, I ended up being Janet in our If interpretation with the whole choreography and stuff like that. So
Oh, wow.
trailed,
That's
it has
amazing.
followed me up until last year, and I love Janet. Will forever love Janet. I know she's about to go on tour again, and I might go see
Oh my gosh. I love Janet Jackson
her.
too. But
She's
I just
amazing.
remember you and Tabitha. Like, shout
Yes.
out to Tabitha if you're listening. You guys were just so amazing. I used to be like
Thank
so jealous.
you.
I was like, I wish I could dance like them.
But your energy for
So enough about
dancing,
dance.
yes, right. Dance was great. But you always were so invigorated and be like, all right, let's do this. I love it.
Come on. All right, so let's talk a little bit. I want to talk about your story. I want to talk about because, and I want to talk about how you got started. First of
Mm-hmm.
all, where your parents came from,
Mm-hmm.
and then how you ended up getting started in public health, and a little bit about what you've done with it, because you've done a huge amount with the AIDS, with the Ryan White
Mm-hmm.
AIDS program, AIDS and HIV. So
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about a little bit about that.
Sure. So my parents are from Jamaica, and they moved here, I don't know, in their 20s or something, maybe, I think. And I was born in Allentown. They used to live in Connecticut, and then they moved to Allentown, I think, for work or something. And we've lived in the house that we live in now since I was 7, which is how I got to Parkland, because I used to be in like the Emmaus School District, which is our another county next to us that was one of our rival schools, if you will. And I've always been in healthcare in some way, shape, or form. I thought I was going to become a doctor, and my parents had thought I was going to become a doctor as well. I was in like those, like, I think my mom still is like holding fast. Like, I will be when I finish my doctorate. I will be Dr. Solomon, but right now we're on our way to getting there. And I always knew I wanted to be in healthcare. When I was little, I fell and hit my head and was in the paper for being saved by my father. He got a life-saving award and everything. And the whole
Oh,
healthcare
wow.
thing and being in the hospital kind of intrigued me. And ever since then, I just kind of pursued that. I was like, biology's who's who, one of those award recipients and stuff. And I just knew I was going to be an anesthesiologist or a neonatologist. And then college came, and then organic chemistry came. And I said, oh, maybe not. I
Oh
said,
God.
this is not for me. And I went so far as become president of the pre-med organization on campus. I interned at the hospital. I worked in the emergency room. I interned at the anesthesia workroom. All the things that you should be prepped for to go into med school. And when I got to organic chem, I said, this is not my ministry. I think I need to do something else. And I was exposed. I entered a math and science program my freshman year of college. And for the freshman year, like the summer before my freshman year, rather. And it was a math and science program. I was able to do research. That was the first time I was exposed to an arm of public health but it was more research oriented. And that was looking at trichomoniasis and preterm birth and maternal health. And
Oh,
that
wow.
was kind of when I first was like, oh, maternal health, women's health. And that's where that opened up a whole new world to me. And I was like, okay, so this is kind of public healthy. I didn't really understand what it was. And then that following year, my sophomore year, I applied to the Minority Institute for Research Training through NIH, which was an international research program under the auspices of Public Health Forum. And I really enjoyed it. I got to go to Barbados. I got to do interviews and going house to house, doing interviews about type 2 diabetes and obesity and that Western influence on diet and all of those things. And it really was like, oh, I could do this. But when I realized there's so many different parts of public health, I ended up getting my master's of public health from University of Pittsburgh. I started at Hopkins while I was working full time at a healthcare consulting firm. And all right, one quick thing. I got to back up. So when I came home from college, I worked at Kids Peace, and
Oh,
right, so because my degree is
my
in
sister worked there.
yes. So Kids Peace is an institution for children that are having emotional mental health needs to be served. And my degree was in abnormal psych and African studies. I said, oh, I think I'm going to become a psychiatrist. I went there and I worked for 8 months, and that was my first and last stint in direct healthcare, because
Wow.
unfortunately, the children that have emotional challenges, that truly have ADHD and schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, true, like in that truest form, but they also are kind of a bit violent. And I got thrown up against
Mm-hmm.
the wall by one of my clients, and and headbutted into a concrete wall, and I have TMJ in my jaw. And I was like, I'm good. This is it. I'm good. Developed treatment
Oh,
plans and all
wow.
that. I said, I don't think this is for me. And that's what spurred me to go into another realm, to go into healthcare, into the consulting side of healthcare. And I said,
Gotcha.
this is kind of where I need to be. And I'm glad that I learned it, because behavioral health is still, my jam, my background and stuff like that. So being able to integrate those things into your decision making into public health. And that was really the first time I was entrenched and exposed to public health, when I got to go to Barbados and do the research and stuff like that. But I realized I was also working in the lab and doing like
Mm.
pipetting and all this, and the bench work. I was so bored. Oh my goodness. My personality, I've tried to be. I didn't start out as a bubbly person. I was very much introverted for a while, but as I got older, certain things kind of made me bloom. And sitting at a bench, pipetting, cell.
Not one of them.
No, I said I can't do this. But I really enjoyed being in the field and talking to people and talking about what are the cognitive behavioral things that make you change or choose the types of food that you eat. Is it your environment? Is your family structure? Is it your culture? All of those things that are all the fields that you can't really touch or taste. The more qualitative, no, all the huggy, snuggly feeling type things is what resonated with me. And I said, I think this is what I want to do. I think I want to be in public health. And the impact was much broader than that of me, I felt, being a clinician or a physician.
Mm.
And the bureaucracy. And I think it's funny because I was like, I don't want to be involved in the bureaucracy of being a physician, and yet I'm in the government. Go figure. So
From the frying pan into the fire.
right. So that's how I got into it. And I really was intrigued that you could affect and impact the masses by what you're doing,
Mm.
and I really appreciated the industry, the public health industry, because and how it's grown, especially after COVID. It has exploded. People are like, well, what is it? I want to become in
Absolutely.
a public health practitioner. But when I first went into it, my mother was like, so you're going to be a food inspector? And I was like, what? She's like, no. I was like, I don't understand. She's like,
A
public
food
health.
inspector?
Isn't that those are people who go to restaurants and they check public health? And I said, that's just one aspect, but no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing something else, much broader, national, international scale. And she's like, oh, so you'll be able to get a job. I said, yes, I will. She's like, all right, just making
Yes.
sure that we didn't waste our money sending you to school. So those things definitely came into play for that. And it's always it's an evolving field, and it's integral into everything that we do. And yes, from the food inspector up until the programming and the marketing for breast care, for reproductive care, for cancer care. May is brain cancer and brain tumor awareness month, and reproductive health. May is also menstrual health month. So those types of things. And while I'm going through this journey, I'm still having to engage in and deal with my own health challenges. That also
Right.
prompted me to really explore, well, what does this life like if I'm going to be dealing with chronic illness? I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis while I was in college, when I was 19 years old. And that time I found out, or I was told that I probably wouldn't be able to have children. Or if I did try to have children, I would either not survive the pregnancy or that the child wouldn't make it to full term, because of all the
Wow.
scarring and I've had like 14 different surgeries for a host of different things. 5 of them have been for endometriosis. And
Wow.
it's a lot, because you always think, for ladies that we have this vision of what our life is going to be, picket fence or whatever your upbringing is. You think it's going to mirror to an extent, good or bad, some parts of what you grew up in. And I always thought I was going to have kids and, have a white picket fence and all that other stuff. And it just wasn't in the cards for me. And that's okay. But understanding that because it's caused by a particular disease that is not understood, that 1 in 10 women have, it takes 7 years to get diagnosed from it. And if you're of a community of color, it gets that much longer because of how the healthcare system treats people of color. Still to this day, from the vestiges of
Wow.
slavery in the 60s and all those things, social determinants of health, and how we have to fight to be heard and seen and not taken for granted that, well, we're just making too much of it. The amount of times that I've had to go to the hospital because I have endometriosis, which by the way is a reproductive health disease where the lining of your
Mhm.
uterus somehow finds its way outside of your uterus and it attaches to different parts of your body. It can attach your uterus to your bowels, which has happened to me. It can anywhere blood goes, it can go. So you can have thoracic
Yeah.
endometriosis in your chest. It can go to your brain. It can cause, there's so many different nuances of it. And having stage 4 doesn't mean your pain, having stage 1 versus stage 4, your pain can still be the same amount, but it just manifests in a different way. But it takes over your life, on so many levels. And all of those things combined with my interest in public health, reproductive health, and all those things, it just kind of, I guess, dovetailed all together to make me the woman that I am now on multiple levels, what I've been exposed to, what I've engaged in, how I decided to leverage these aha moments into a company, if you will. So, fast forward a couple years, after multiple surgeries, I had to leave school for a while, for a semester or two,
Wow.
because let me tell you about menopause. Yeah, it's not fun. I'm in.
No, it's
No,
not.
no, and I would like a refund. I'd give it 0 stars.
Yes.
0. Do not recommend.
You know what, Natalie? I want to, I want a refund too. It's funny because I just had this conversation with someone the other day, and I was talking to someone before our
Uh-huh.
interview, and I had this massive hot flash. And it's funny because no one wants to talk about menopause. I
No,
mean, people are starting to,
that's right.
but it is such, it is something that is so like it's a mystery and it's different for
Everybody.
everybody.
It is different for everyone.
Doctors want to just blanket it and say it's the same for
Right.
everyone,
It's
but
life
it's not.
changing. It is a major life
Yeah.
shift. And while I was in college, because my endometriosis was so severe, post my first surgery, they put me on a drug called Lupron. Do not recommend it. It was a
Mm.
drug developed for men for prostate cancer. It was the side effect is that it stopped our functions and you producing estrogen. So that's what contributes to your endo. And going through
Wow.
menopause while you're in college, don't recommend it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I was pledging my sorority at the time and I had to leave. I had to stop and I had to leave school. And it was a lot. It was a lot. And then I came back the year later, 2 years later, and because my endo wasn't progressing in the way that they needed, it kept coming back. So they put me on it again, but with hormonal therapy, hormonal replacement. So it wasn't as
Wow.
bad. And then this last time I'm in it because I had a brain tumor. And because of where the brain tumor was, it was growing around my pituitary gland. They had to cut out part of my pituitary gland, which controls your hormones. So it put me into menopause right away.
You have, and before I hit the record button, we were talking about
Mhm.
this, and it is something that I'm going to shift gears for a minute. It's something that I've been talking about a lot, is that we go through challenges.
Mhm.
You get, life throws
It does.
you curveballs that you don't
Yeah.
expect, and you can't stay down.
Yeah.
And also, we have to look and see the opportunities
Yes.
in these challenges. And you've been through so much between, number one, like really fighting for what you want and
Mhm.
being a voice to help others, to help women of
Mhm.
color, and to be a voice for them to, correct a lot of the I don't even want to say mistakes, the things that we've
Yeah.
done wrong in the healthcare
Yeah.
industry, um, as well as being an entrepreneur, as well as being in public health. I mean, like how, and you said to me before I hit the record button, you said, Theresa, all of the things that I've been through have made me the woman that I am today.
Yeah. For sure.
And how did you, well, first of all, like I said, you are just such a
Thank
powerhouse and
you.
such a, like I said, a voice for change, which is what this world
Thank
needs.
you.
This world needs more women like you. This world
Appreciate
needs
that.
more people like you. And so how do you, like, how did you keep getting back up, and what have you
Hmm.
learned from all of these challenges and obstacles that were thrown your way?
It's like I couldn't not do it. Like I didn't know how else to perform. Not to say that I didn't have bouts of depression, because I did. Not to say that I was like, you know what, this is for the birds. I just want to not get up, because there are definite days I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just roll over on this side of the bed today, and then I'm gonna roll back on that side tomorrow. And your health is your wealth on so many levels. And I know that's kind of
Mm.
cliche and folks say that all the time, but it truly is. And that's from your physical health to your mental health. I would say, I didn't know how else not to move forward. My parents, they're powerhouses. My sister is amazing. I don't know where I would be without them. They have been such a
Mm.
huge support for me on so many levels. And they've always like poured into us about positive They were doing positive affirmations before it became a thing. And I've always remembered my father's remember who you are. You can do anything that you put your mind to. And that has always played in the back of my head. But when you're down and out and in the hospital and you can't move, and I had to learn how I couldn't walk, I couldn't, I had to learn how to write certain things again and articulate. I had aphasia, which is when you want to say certain things, but your mouth, muscles in your mouth don't connect with your brain. And I had to deal with that for a little while. My doctors and my nurses, at one point, I was at the hospital so much, they were like, "Do you work here?" Because wow, the nurses were like,
I
I could,
could.
my parents would love that. You get to the point where you don't have any other choice. It's like one of the quotes that I had on on my website is, you don't know how strong you are until you have to be. There's no other choice. You have to keep
Mm.
going. And I know for some people that's easier said than done, but I have so much other things that I feel I have to do. And this is all these things that have happened to me haven't been in vain. I've had nurses come in when my pain threshold is way higher than the most average person, because I have a chronic illness. I'm always in pain, and I have been for 20 plus years. That's all I know, is to be in pain. And when you get used to it, and unfortunately it's been to my detriment, because I've let certain things go under the radar, which have landed me in the ICU and being septic or almost
Yeah.
dying, and due to a ruptured gallbladder. And they're like, "You didn't feel that happen?" I'm like, "Well, it hurt a little bit." But when you're dealing with stage 4 endo and being in pain, when it hurts to breathe, when it hurts to feel like when it hurts to blink sometimes,
Mm.
your body becomes trained to become resilient, and you kind of end up having to transfer that resiliency to the actions in your life. And how does that work with what it is that you intend to do? Because I know me sitting around and being in pain, and there's days where I was completely incapacitated. I couldn't do anything. I have to crawl or drag myself to the bathroom. I have to crawl and drag myself to bed. Having to be able to not use a walker for a while, have, those types of things. There's so many things that have come at me that when I talk to some of my nurses and doctors, they're like, when I was on the stroke floor after part of my recovery from my brain surgery, I would get up and I wasn't allowed to walk for a really long time. I woke up and I had to lay on my back. There was a laser going into my ear that if I stood up, sat up to a certain point, it would discombobulate something with my brain fluid that could kill me. I wasn't allowed to walk because if I put my feet down, the pressure from my spine and my legs would have killed me. So I was bedridden in ICU, the nurses had to feed me and all that stuff because I wasn't allowed to sit up. You go through those things. You only have time to lay there and think about, well, how can I change my life? How I can't live like this forever, or this can't be it. I know this can't be it. So what else can I do? And I tried to have the most positive outlook I could because I knew what the alternative was. And the nurses were like, you are one of the happiest brain surgery patients we have ever had in our life, because there's people on the stroke floor that they can do what you do, but their outlook on life is so dark. And I get it, because it puts you in a really, really dark place, because people can offer their well wishes all they want, but you're living it. When you're living it and you don't know where that's going to lead, because the surgery that I had was 10 hours and I had had a previously botched hysterectomy that had endangered my life and still does, unfortunately, because it messed up my kidneys to this day. 3 surgeries, none of them work. They're telling me they need to take my kidney, and I still have to have brain surgery. Like, it's it's like you don't know what you don't know, in the sense of, well, if I sit here and mope, and being that my background is in behavioral health, the mind is so powerful. And what you think, and that's where manifestation comes into play, laws of attraction, and all of those things, and positive self-talk, those things are real. And if you sit there and you talk to yourself like you're not going to make it, well, you're right, you won't. And I just kept pressing forward, and I had to leverage those opportunities that I saw, because I'm like, I know I'm not the only person going through this, so how can I leverage that?
So tell me, I'm going to shift gears again on you. So tell me, because through all of this, well, before I ask this question, tell me a little bit about, because you ended up making a pivot and starting your business. But before that, I just want to hear, I want to hear a little bit, because you did a lot with the Ryan White AIDS and HIV organization area. So tell me a little bit about that. Because that's a big, it was like the weirdest thing, because you heard about it so much. And then it was like, all of a sudden, like, you didn't hear as much about it, and now you're starting to hear more about it. So just tell us a little bit about that before we get into your pivot into owning a business.
Yeah. So with my degree in public health and stuff, I didn't really know anything about the HIV forum. I was always into health inequities and health disparities. And that's what my graduate student assistantship was when I was in the grad school. And I ended up getting a fellowship with the Schools of Public Health with the agency that I'm with now, and which is which is with HHS, Health Resources Services Administration. Also, disclaimer, anything I say is on me and my company, not the federal government. I have to make sure I put that disclaimer out there. And I got exposed. I came in as a fellow working on public health care opportunities programs, and which is a program I ended up going through while I was an undergrad, which ironically, I was like, go figure. I ended up overseeing that program. I left for a year, went into the private sector, was working on employee assistance programs for Fortune 500 companies and doing marketing and behavioral health stuff for them. And then I applied again to a scholars program with the same agency, and that brought me back in 2006. When I started that, I was working in the public National Health Service Corps, which is a program that takes clinicians and puts them in underserved areas, and they pay their school loans and all that other stuff. And I was with them for a couple years, maybe 3 or 4 years, and I knew I needed to change. I ran the state loan repayment program, which is the same thing, but on a state level. And then I ran the nursing program, contributed to that. And I just honestly was applying to jobs. My stress level was crazy. I was working 90 hours a week. I was sleeping in my office. People are like, you can't possibly work for the government. Who works for the government that much? Because, most people don't think we do anything. I was part of that 20% that actually does work. Um, and when I applied, and it's funny, I drove myself, I was having chest pains because work was stressing me. I drove myself to the hospital. I'm in the hospital. I get a phone call and they're like, oh, Miss Solomon, we'd like to bring you in for an interview. I had no idea what job it was because I've been applying for jobs for like 2 years. And they're like, oh, we're in the HIV and AIDS Bureau. And I was like, oh, well, I can't come in right now because I'm in the emergency room. So, but I'd be happy to schedule something by the end of the week. And they were like, wow, okay, Miss Solomon, how about you call us when you're ready. I said, don't give the job away. I was so amped. I was like, don't give the job away. I finally got a call. And then I went in and I joined this program under Ryan White. For those of you who do not know, Ryan White was a young man who had, I can't remember the hemophilia. And so he always needed to have blood transfusions. And during the 80s, when all this happened, he was infected by a blood pack that was HIV positive, and all the things that came with that. The shaming, it was a lot. It was a lot. So out of that came the Ryan White program, and then there's several different parts through A through B, from city to maternal to different organizations and clinics and federally qualified health centers and the like. But the area that I have been in since 2012 was with the Special Projects of National Significance, which basically was we're the catch-all. We were the catch-all for those individuals that were in Part A through D that were very, very strategic and very prescriptive type of care, versus where I was, it's not the same division anymore. We looked at how do we integrate and create innovative programming for individuals that have fallen through the cracks of the standard operating procedure of what the program of Ryan White was. So I really enjoyed, this was an amazing group of folks, and we still work on different programs today. There's been a couple of reorgs and everything like that. But that's how I got into the HIV and AIDS field. And then even so, at the beginning when I came in, one of the first projects I worked on was women of color and HIV. And I could see there were certain gaps that I was like, well, how come we're not speaking to these things? And, it was an interesting way to start the conversation for me to start percolating different ideas in the back of my head on what this public health arena is like as a public health analyst. And those things just kind of grew, and I learned about, people from the field, that the protesters and all those were now integrating the government. So they were giving the government a different perspective on patient-centered care and where we need to go with patient-centered care, and making sure we're addressing the whole person, not just one, oh, I hurt my finger, but yeah, you didn't come in to your appointment. You just don't want to be compliant, not realizing they may have to take 3 buses to get to their appointment. They may need childcare. And Ryan White is a payer of last resort. So it compensates for individuals who are not in a position to take care or pay for their services. And it was so real and raw compared to the other places I've been in the government. And I was in a meeting one time, and they were just dropping like cuss words and stuff. And it was so real. I was like, wow, is this how we talk in the government? But I get it, because it was people's lives, even though I hadn't been in direct healthcare since I had gotten out of high school, or first got out of college rather. The rawness and the face of those that are living with HIV and are thriving with HIV now, because it's pretty much like a chronic disease. There's long-acting injectables that pretty much you can sustain your life as if you're on type 2 diabetes and comorbidities and the like. So that it's become a disease. It's still an issue. The rate of infection is still very high, and especially among underserved populations and minority populations and the like. So it was a different way for me to be introduced to the field of HIV because it was creative, it was innovative. One of the programs that we're wrapping up now, I wrote the concept for looking at Black women first and how we needed to focus on HIV in that realm. And we just finished wrapping up. We're working on papers right now. They'll be coming out soon. I hope we're going through clearance. So I'll keep you posted on the development of those things. But looking at the intersectionality of healthcare, HIV, comorbidities, and how that all affect, and mental health, and how all those things were not a monolith as far as our healthcare as women, how we receive care, how we talk about care, are we advocates for ourselves for care? And those are things that I've become because I've been in the healthcare system more than I would have ever liked or wish on anybody. It
On both
on both
sides.
sides. Exactly.
On
On
both
both
sides.
sides. It has I've been afforded that opportunity to be like, okay, so how do I capitalize on this? How do I leverage this in another arena? Because being in the government, a lot of times you're limited with what you can say. We all understand what the political arena has been and is going and what it is now.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that I can't say. I can't promote or anything, but I knew there still are gaps. There's still needs that need to be filled, and how that kind of led me to the creation of my company. Because while I'm still going through all of these healthcare
Nice segue.
I got you. How I got to get to this point because dealing with all these surgeries, dealing with the mental health and anguish of what, the confirmation that I couldn't have children and all those surgeries that come with that. And you wonder, okay, I'm dealing with infertility. What does this make me as a woman? How am I getting my care? I have endometriosis. I'm going to the emergency room all the time. Nobody believes me about what I can, if I'm really in pain, and are you drug seeking, or, oh, you're just dismissed as something else. And, I needed a respite for myself. So in 2019, when I had my botched hysterectomy and they cut my ureter instead of my fallopian tube, and that just has caused a whole host of other things that I'm still dealing with to this day, unfortunately, I needed
My
a
gosh.
place to relax, recharge, and refresh. And in my house, I have a room in my basement outside of the man cave that's in the other part of my house. And I was like, I think I need to have a meditation space or a prayer space, a war room, or whatever, if you will. And I always have been like the decorator, party decorator. My friends are always like, oh, Natalie always has an eye. Let's like decorate some stuff or whatever. And I said, well, let me just take this space and like relax, relate, release in it. And it literally just started out with a ancestral altar, a prayer space. And it was a container, a plastic container, like, those storage containers. I put a white sheet over it, put some candles on top of it, and some painting because I like to paint and do like paint by number and be an artist and sketch and draw, which I've always done, but kind of kept that in the background, but I've always done that. And as time went on, I would just go in there and lay down. I would sleep. I would cry. I would scream. I would just be like, why is this happening to me? Why am I sick again? Why am I in the hospital again? Why can't I have kids? Why can't I? All the whys. And it was a place for me to do that was just mine. But as time progressed, I started adding different things to it, making it, adding different decor. And then I started doing like workshops for my friends on vision boarding and vision journaling. And, because all throughout all of this, there has to be a calm for you to get through to that next leg. And those things have kind of manifested in some of my friends call me like, she's the shaman of the group. She's always the one who has sees the bright side of everything. And, everything is an opportunity to capitalize on where things and where things could have been, or and how you need to be grateful with where you are and with what you have. And those things kind of manifested. And I said, I'm going to start my own company. And the name of my company is Merake Life and Style. And Merake is a Greek word. There's no equivalent to it in the English language. And it means putting the essence of yourself into your work through love, through your love and your
It's
soul,
okay.
and creativity, through love, soul, and creativity, and you put yourself into your work, whatever that may be. And it
I love
just
that.
resonated. And I did a long search for that. I really thought about it. I prayed on it. And I said, this is what I want my company name to be because of what it represents to me and what I've gone through and what I continue to go through. And that I've had to be creative in my outlook on life because I've been dealt some really stinky hands, if you will. And, so yeah.
Ask for a
I really
refund.
would like one. Truly, truly would like a refund. So it's just,
I know, believe me. I want a refund on some stuff too.
so those things manifested. And my girlfriend came to me one day and she was in my room and it was all decorated. And she was like, Nat, people will pay you to create these spaces for them. And I was like, what? She's like, no, seriously, people will pay you to create these spaces for them. And I had gone to a women's health thing for Kaiser, some sort of seminar, and there was a lady there, and her job was to decorate hospitals and NICUs, breast centers that were calming and peaceful for the patients. And I said, oh, it's the same thing, but just at home. But then you're able to actually add your own flair to it, your personality, and take what you have for whatever you're envisioning and you engulf yourself in that space. So my room is of my own big vision board. I have one wall is all my sorority stuff. The back wall is the name of my company and what it means with my initials. The other wall is all my artwork from my travels and my drafting table where I keep all my paints. And then my front space is my altar, my prayer space. And it's my safe space. I love it. I haven't been down there in a little bit,
I love
and
that.
that's okay because sometimes you don't need it all
I
the
love
time.
that.
And that's what I started. And I said, as I'm growing, how can I expand this? Because there's other things. How can I incorporate my public health background with my love of doing design? And that's what came up with it. But then on the other arm of that, I expanded it to the Meraki Empowerment Collective, which is a component where the consulting comes into play, where I do public speaking on reproductive health, on brain health, on securing your oxygen mask first, which is basically my mantra for my business and the way I live my life because of all the things that I've had to do, the amount of oxygen masks that I've had placed on on myself through all my trials and tribulations. That is my life personified. And if I don't take care of myself, I can't pour into others. You can't pour into an empty cup. And that, started our podcast that I have with a girlfriend of mine, one of my sorority sisters. And then the Meraki events and mindful events and decors is a decor component. And where I do events, I do weddings and all of those things. So I knew I had something, but I didn't want to be, the master, Jane of all trades, master of none. But then there's something to be said for having those ideas where you can impact others based on all the different things that you're doing. You just got to try to organize it. Which is why I was telling you before you got on the call, I'm like, Theresa, I'm going to need your help. I need your help. And I had to take a break from it while I was sick. And I rebooted it while I was recovering because I was off for a year.
I am so excited for you. And I've seen a lot of the posts that you've had of events that you've done or shows that you've been to. And you are going to do amazing with it. And yes, I am always here to help you. I am always here to help you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm telling you, if you read Natalie's bio, I was like, holy crap. I mean, the amount of impact that you have made on people and the things that you have done. My mentor always says, and he taught me this a long time ago, because I always thought legacy was about what you built. Legacy is about who you are and the impact and the mark that you leave on the hearts of the people that you reach every day with what you do. And I got to tell you, Natalie, like with everything that you've done and just like who you are, every person, you cannot have a conversation with this woman and not laugh. Number one. Number two, You cannot have a conversation or meet her and not put a smile on your face because her smile is so infectious. But your energy, I mean, no, like this, and it's funny because as you were talking, I was thinking about it. And I was like, the healthcare system and public health needs some creativity,
Yes.
needs some innovation. And that's what you started to do in working in the areas that you've worked in, is to insert that, to say, there are gaps, there are problems. I can fix this. In this challenge, I can find the opportunity that is going to change the trajectory of this program or fix a lot of the injustices that we've built over the years as a society. And I think this is just that next level to say, to take all of that creative genius and kind of put it together to solve another problem.
That is my plan.
And
that is my plan.
Oh my God. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing.
To seeing how it unfolds.
Before we wrap this up, because, oh my God, I said to her, I like to keep it to a half an hour.
30 minutes later.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, because you just co-authored a book and you just launched the book. So tell us about it.
It's called I Am Worthy. It is a #1 Amazon bestseller. And it is a collection. It's an anthology. And the name of it is I Am Worthy, Empowering Stories and Affirmations to Encourage Healing and Resilience. And it was a project that I was able to get on by being in a group of amazing ladies through the Black Door Society, which is women helping women to build wealth and capitalize on their entrepreneurship and other connections to build wealth amongst each other. And one of the president of the group had a connection she had done a book with the publisher before. And she called me up one day and she's like, hey, Nat, would you be interested in being in an anthology? And I was like, sure. Said, I know you're published before, but that's in your public health realm. Would you, want to look into that? And I said, sure. And it's a group of 28 other women. And we all I did affirmations, which definitely helped me go through my day. And I get up and I meditate, I do my affirmations and, all of that stuff. And it's so important to do that. So that was the niche I wanted to be. And other ladies talk about their life, what they've gone through, how they've had resilience. So it's a collection of writings, chapters, affirmations, speaking to how we've gotten through healing and how we've been resilient to get to that healing. And it dropped March 29th. And we're really excited. We had an interview last week on Facebook Live about it and what inspired us to be in it. I recently was going to be in another anthology, but I cannot do 6 million things at once. So I had to say no. I had to make an adult decision and said, no, Natalie, we're not going to be in another anthology right now. We're going to take a pause and think about how I'm going to, put my own book together just on me. And I'll probably do a book of affirmations just from what I've been through and a collection of my posts. And you see all my posts, they always are like, try to be positive. So I probably will do a compilation of those things that have helped me get through and continue to help me get through as my next book. And then eventually I'll put out the book that'll be like a Lifetime movie or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what's in store.
I can't wait to read it. I actually have to get this book.
Send you one. You got to give me your address and I will send you one.
Okay. Thank you. I'm excited to read it. I never used to read, and over the past couple of years, like I really got into reading. I love audiobooks. So I'm excited.
I'm in my office now. My whole wall is bookcase, and I just don't have the time to read anymore. So I do the audiobooks, which are great.
Audiobooks, yeah. Well, Natalie, this has been so amazing.
This has been great.
So amazing. I mean, like I said, you are doing so much good for this world and really are one of those people that is helping us to improve things so that we leave this world much better than we found it. So, before we end here, I want to ask you one question. What is your favorite affirmation?
Probably the short and sweet that I use for my mantra is secure your oxygen mask first. Because without it, we all know if you're on an airplane, you can't help anybody else. So you have to do that for yourself. And it's not selfish. It's part of your self-care. And it's so imperative that you take care of yourself, because what good are you going to be to anybody else? You won't be able to go out there and make change if you're not taking care of yourself. And I think that just resonates so well on so many different levels. And I just went to Detroit last week for my Founders Day weekend, and I was sitting on the plane and just hearing it again while the flight attendant was explaining why it's so important to put your mask on first, so that you can pour into others, but you have enough for yourself first, and then help everyone else as you see fit. So I would definitely say secure your oxygen mask first. It's important. It's imperative for you to thrive.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Before I let you go back to your day, tell everybody where they can find you.
So everything that you need to know on me is at Natalie A. Solomon, SOLOMON Bramage, BRIMAGE.me. And that will take you to the portal of all my websites, all my link trees, my empowerment website, my decor website, all of those things. That'll be the gateway to get to everything. My YouTube channel, and find out about my podcast, Sipping Tea with Nat and Z, where we talk about fun stuff and being ladies and empowerment. So check that out, but that'll be the gateway to best get in touch with me. You can get to my book that way. You can order a book online as well. So just let me know. And I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for anybody who is watching, because this will be on YouTube and it will be anywhere where you can listen to a podcast. And we also do little clips. So you'll see clips of this amazing conversation all over the place. But Natalie, thank you so much for joining me today. I am definitely going to have you on the podcast again. And we'll see what you have come up with for this business and for your next idea, and just how you're making the world a better place. So
I'm so honored.
Thank you so much for joining us. And for everybody else out there, let's all take care of each other just a little bit more than we already do. So I will see you again next week. Hey there. Thank you so much for listening. If you found value on the show, please follow the podcast so you never, ever miss an episode. And I would love, love, love if you would leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify for me. Even better, share the show with a fellow business owner ready to step fully into their CEO leadership role. Because right now, more than ever, the world really needs next level leaders. And by the way, did you know you can text me all your questions and get real-time feedback? You absolutely can. Just text the word CEO to me at 610-215-2838 to get connected. One last goodie for you before I go. If you're ready to scale your business and have a co-creator working right by your side, my C-Suite Mentor Program may be perfect for you and your possible new second in command. Just visit thecsuitementor.com to get started.